Although I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas, this podcast is not therapy and should not be used as therapeutic intervention. Many of the products and practices mentioned are for educational and informational purposes only. Should you need support, please seek appropriate, qualified, and licensed professionals. Hey y'all, welcome to Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist, the podcast where we navigate the murky waters between what society expects and what it means to truly live, embrace the messiness, the beautiful chaos of life, and celebrating the rebellion in the process. Whether you're a recent graduate, a seasoned therapist, or someone just curious, there's something here for everyone. But before we dive in, make sure you join the Hot Mess Rebellion community where you can connect to other like-minded souls. I'm your host, Shauna Lovin, a seasoned therapist and wellness educator with a very rebellious spirit. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's rebellion. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Between a Hot Mess and a Therapist. So today I'm actually dropping a bonus episode. It's been a while since I've actually really recorded. I've been kind of in this winter hiatus, but I've been planning for the spring. And so stay tuned to some more spring-ish editions coming soon. But today I wanted to take a minute and talk about the LPC path to licensure. So going from grad to a licensed professional counselor, grad to license. It is not always an easy process. However, I'm here to give you the scoop because I know sometimes in grad school, they only give bits and pieces of the information. They don't give you all the things you need to know or tell you what you need to expect. So that is what today's episode is about. So if you are new around here, I am Shauna Lovin. I am a therapist, have been licensed for 13 years. I have 25 years of experience in the mental health and wellness fields. And some of that experience, it starts in grad school or before grad school, working with clients, working in the field, from personal experiences, kind of all of it, working with associates. I put it all together. And after 25 years, there are some things that I have seen and heard, and nothing surprises me anymore. So let's take a minute and get into it. So first, I want to take a minute and I want you to reflect on, were you born for this? Think about in your childhood, were you the child that everyone talked to? Were you the person who wondered about just the world in general? Were you the rescuer of animals? Did you notice other kids in need? Did you have like that sense of intuition that someone else needed help? Were you the person who's fixed problems or solved problems? You were probably the thinker. And you probably once got hurt yourself. I remember growing up that, my parents were not, they were not together. And for a long time, I thought they were divorced, but later on I found out they were just not together and they didn't officially never divorced. And I just remembered that there were different pieces and elements that were coming from my mom's side, my dad's side, and realizing like, hey, there's some stuff going on here and I need to help people. And I remember the first time that I actually went to counseling, I was 10 and it was after my father had passed away, and thinking about this experience, like, who is this person that I'm talking to? And I couldn't quite understand like all the aspects of it. One, because I think it wasn't totally relatable, meaning that this person was in the church. It was a church counseling center. They were older than me. And here I am being 10, trying to figure out what is all this shit going on and not really understanding. So think about like when you were a child, were you the sensitive, intuitive helper then? Because if you were, you are likely a person who is meant to be here. So how do we know if you are actually aligned with your purpose to be here? So think about what attracted you to counseling in the first place. What is the meaning, or what does being in this space mean to you? Or what is your vision for yourself to be a counselor, a therapist, a healer, a helper, whatever you want to throw out there? What is pushing you into this direction? And, we have to think about, again, this starts with our personal story. So again, I'll remember, I think 10 was definitely a pivotal age for me, because that was around the same time where I felt like going into counseling or helping people in this manner would be great. Because for a long time, I was like, I'm going to be a pediatrician. This is what I'm going to do when I grow up, right? But when I got to high school, I realized I was not good in science, and chemistry was not my subject. And I quickly realized you cannot be a doctor without having a science background. And so I was trying to figure out, what do I do from here? And then I thought back, I had this experience when I was 10. Even though it was weird, I didn't know what it was about. It was pretty cool. And maybe that's something that I could do. And here we are, 25 years later. I'm doing it. So with these two pieces in place, think about if you were born for this, are you aligned for this? Let's talk about, what does it really take to become licensed? We all know that we need to go to grad school. We know that you need some kind of master's degree where 48 of the 60 hours that you are acquiring are counseling related in curriculum. We also know that there is a practicum requirement that you have to do where there's 300 hours you got to get done, and 100 of them need to be direct, meaning face-to-face with clients. And so this is the broad spectrum now versus when I went to school back in the early 2000s. I'm old. God, I'm old. But the programs that you could pick are very vastly different now. There's a more of a wide variety now than there were, say, 25 years ago. And so think about when you're picking a program, or hopefully you're already in a program, I don't know, is this program suited towards the journey that you are about to embark on? Because there's a lot of times where we go to school, we have this journey that we are anticipating, and then it doesn't work out that way. And I'm a prime example of that. I actually went to grad school to get a master's degree in forensic psychology. And if I would have known before I started to maybe make slightly different choices, I would have just gone for the PhD, because what I really wanted to do was help the police department or military and be kind of like that counseling person that's on staff. That's what I wanted to do. And I didn't realize at the time that you needed to have a PhD or a PsyD or something like that to do that role. And so, which meant I started in the master's program and was like, okay, I'll just go back. And the advice that I have now is, if you want a PhD, just go for it. Because if you just do a master's, you may never go back to school, or it becomes more time, more money, and all the things. And so just to kind of avoid that, you either figure out you either want to or you don't. So that's that. But I was in forensic psychology, and I was not planning on being a LPC. I was not. It was a whole thing that happened behind the scenes, and with my thesis and internship, there was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of happened that kind of got me here. And I truly believe that was the universe kind of pushing me in the direction that I needed to go, because all the other stuff wasn't quite working out. And so here we are again, 25 years later. So now we have this master's degree. Some advice that I would throw out here is, as you are finishing school, get your practicum documentation form signed before you leave school. So If you know that you are planning to become licensed, there's a form that's in the packet that needs to be signed by the school. What often happens is you graduate school, you don't know, you move on with life, and then you go back to get this form signed because now you need it, and the person or the program director is no longer there. And then you have to find someone else to sign off on the form, and it just makes a whole bunch of mess. And so if you get this one form signed, regardless if you plan to move forward or not, you have it signed, it's in your files, and you can move on with that. The other thing that I would work on or be on top of as soon as you finish school is request your official transcripts. One, because we know that the registrar's office is moving kind of slow and they do things on their time. We know that. But two, your transcripts, there was a time where you could do it, but now they have to be sent directly to the board. And so it just takes time for that whole process to happen. And so you want to get that on order as soon as possible so that that can be sent to the board so it's not hindering your overall licensure process in the end. Okay, so the next thing that comes up in this whole process is that you have to do background checks. Now, there used to be just like a criminal history check or a fingerprint check, but now there's also the National Practitioner Database Self-Inquiry Report. Like, it's a long name. So the fingerprint one really is just your criminal history. It costs about $50 and you got to go to the designated place to get that done. And the board tells you where you can go. Like, there's a whole process with that. But it's basically checking the FBI, the state board of, I forget what it's called. I think it's TINF or something like that, where they're basically running to see, do you have any charges? Now, I am not going to say just because you have a criminal background of some sort that you should not do this process. There are some things that are clear, hard, fast, no. There are just some. So think about like, well, I'm not even going to go to that. We just know that there are some that are clear, hard, fast, no. But then there's some where maybe something happened, you have something on your record, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a great counselor, okay? And so it would behoove you just to go ahead and go through the process and then let the board tell you yes or no, or this is maybe an alternative of what we can do. The self-inquiry report is more of, has anybody filed anything on you kind of report. Want to know, or there have been any complaints, kind of, that's more what that is. And that's $13. And so, those two also get sent directly to the board. So again, and so you don't have any delays when you know you need to do these two things. It's like in the process, just get it done so that they can be sent. I'll explain why here in a minute. The next step on this journey is exams. And this one actually comes before actually doing the background check, but it's exams. So here in Texas, we have the National Counselor Exam or the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor Exam. I know that's a long one too. So these are the two national exams that you can take. Some states have both. Some states only have a state exam. I remember when I moved from Illinois to Texas, Illinois has a state exam. And I knew we were coming here to Texas, so I decided to wait and then just take the national exam because I would have had to take it twice and I just wasn't about to do that. And so just be mindful of, if you are coming in from another state, that you may have to take the exam twice because it has to be one of these two exams. From the last time I checked, the exam is about $275. It may have gone up. I'm not really sure, but that's about kind of where we're sitting on price wise. The other thing is that you can take these exams at a local testing center. They usually happen about once a month. So you kind of have to be on top of registering and scheduling yourself so that you can make sure that you get there on time and take the exam. This one, the board will also send the scores to this exam will also be sent directly to the board. Now, here is what typically holds a lot of people up. And I actually have a current pending associate who is waiting on the test scores to be sent to the board. So everything else is done. But again, they're operating on their own time, their own frequency. Yeah, you know that you passed the exam because it's electronic. However, waiting for them to send it to the board can take weeks. So just keep that in mind. This is why you want to make sure you have all the pieces in a row, or all your ducks in a row, so that this may be the only piece that holds you up, nothing else. So that's just kind of my advice. Oh, here's another thing about the exam. The exam, a lot of times, unless they've changed it, but I keep hearing the same thing from newer associates, the exam is nothing of what you studied in school. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. It is nothing of what you studied in school. It is not about theory. It is not about modalities. It's not about any of that. It is more about practical application of the things that you learned in school. And so my biggest advice is just know your terms, your definitions, and use the exam to take the exam. Okay? That's how you're going to pass the exam on the first try. Because I know I wasn't sure I was going to, and I did. So the next exam that you have to take is your Texas Jurisprudence. This is something that we have to do like every 2 years anyway when we renew. And it's basically the Texas ethics exam. So it goes through all the ethics and the board rules and things like that. But it is more or less you can't fail it test because it's kind of open book. And it's just, you got to take it. It's something we do. And it's just there. So that's another one that you have to take. And that one is typically $39 every 2 years when you take that. The next step in the process is you got to find yourself a supervisor. Now, this is probably the one piece that you've heard about in grad school, because this is the one piece that they're very clear on. You do have to have a supervisor in order to move through the licensure process and collect your hours and do kind of like all the things you need to do for supervision. Your supervisor should have the S at the end of their title. That dictates or denotes that they are a supervisor. There is a list on the board's website where you can find yourself a supervisor. They've been a little bit more lenient and relaxed on you can do virtual now, not just in person. They've changed some of the rules to make it a little bit easier, which is lovely. I was actually doing some stats the other day or a week ago, and there are about 25 or 26,000 licensed professional counselors here in the state of Texas. There are about 6,800 supervisors. But the thing you have to be mindful of is only 25% of the supervisors are actually supervising associates. Everybody else, it's just a title. Maybe they're doing something for their full-time job if they have one. Maybe they just got the title. I don't know, but only 25% of that 6,800 are actually seeing people. And yes, I am one of them. And yes, I am accepting new associates. Okay, so here's something that comes up when it comes to looking for a supervisor. So people will think about there's agency supervisors versus private practice supervisor. I'm considered more private practice. So when you go and work for an agency, sometimes they may have someone on site that can offer supervision for you. Sometimes it's free, it's discounted, or there may be some other perks associated with it. But usually sometimes it works out for the associate to work with the on-site supervisor just because it can help you through the process, versus if you come to a private practice supervisor, you are going to have to pay for their time, their knowledge, expertise, and services. And so it's just being mindful of what works for you, and being aware of that there is really a difference. Now, here's the other thing that comes up. Being mindful that if you choose an on-site supervisor, they are great. They can help out. They know the same stuff that I do, or at least I hope they do. The thing, though, that comes up all the time is this supervisor your clinical supervisor versus your job supervisor, your employer supervisor? Because if they are both, that can be a conflict of interest. Let me repeat that. If the supervisor you are picking on site is not just your clinical supervisor for license, but also your supervisor for your job, that can be a conflict of interest. Because sometimes when there's an issue that comes up or something happens and you need to consult, work it out with the supervisor, or just you're not too sure of yourself, just whatever. It could be a lot of reasons why you need to have a conversation with them. The way a clinical supervisor would handle a situation is sometimes different than a way an employer supervisor would handle the same situation. The employer is thinking about the company or agency as a whole. The clinical supervisor is thinking about you and your skill set. And so sometimes when that supervisor is 2 in 1, it just creates a weird feeling that may actually happen. And you may not get the best out of supervision because they're not necessarily pushing you to be your best and to do things that work for you and to stretch your skills versus, no, you have to do things, that job employer supervisor wants you to do things by the book, what's in the book. This is how we do it. This is the flow of the process. You didn't follow that, so you get in trouble. So when you are looking for a supervisor, you want to keep in mind, is this person in private practice or are they with an agency? If they're with an agency, are they going to be both of my supervisors or just one? Things to know. So for the purpose of the board, once you find that supervisor that you hopefully love, but you're not going to know them from Adam, but hopefully they make you feel good and you feel confident in this relationship that is going to grow over time because you're going to have at least 18 months with this person. So you're going to need to complete the supervisor form. And there's a form that we both signed, and you would attach that to all the things that you need to submit to the board for your official application. And I'll get to that in a second. So you'll need that. So first, once you finish school, you're going to start collecting your transcripts. You're going to sign up for your exam if you haven't already done that, because there are some schools that they do the exam before you actually graduate, which is nice. But you're going to do that. You're going to fill out your practicum form, transcripts, and do your 2 background checks and get those set up. And you're going to find yourself a supervisor. So that's where we're at in this process. So the final kind of big step in this process is you're going to put all of your application documents together. So we know that the the 2 background checks, the exam, and the transcripts are the 4 things that are going to go directly to the board. The other things that come from you that you are going to submit is the actual application, the fees, the supervisor application or form that we have agreement, and then there is the military supplemental form if that's applicable. So those are the things that you are going to submit with your fee. Now, back in the day, we used to do all this by mail, but you are in luck. A few years ago, they actually changed when we went from the Texas Licensed Professional Counselor Board, Professional Board Examiners, and we switched to BHEC. We went all electronic. So that's the beautiful thing. You're going to create yourself a portal, and you're going to upload all of these documents into the portal, okay? They're going to be there and they're going to be housed there. So as your background checks, your exam, and your transcripts come in, they're going to start attaching that to the file you created online. So it's a much easier process now to submit, but it still takes time because there's components where you're waiting on other people to do their part. The application fee currently for the actual LPC associate application is $165. That is the current thing. It was updated October 24 and it's $165. So now that we've gotten all of this stuff done, we might have to wait a couple of weeks. We might have to see, it just depends on when the board gets everything and everything is approved. They've reviewed all of it. The board is going to give you a date. That date is the first date that you can start working under as an LPC associate. Now, you get 5 years to complete your hours. 5. Now, I have had an associate that was close to the wire. And the thing about being close to the wire is that if you pass that 5-year date, you have to start all over. And so we want to avoid that. So get it done. Most people, or I'm not going to say people, most associates that I have worked with, we have hovered around 2 years, maybe 2.5. But right in there somewhere is 2 years. And that would include, I've had a couple associates that started with a different supervisor and came to me, and it still ended up being about 2.5 years. So that is typically what I think most people are doing. The board says you only have at minimum 18 months. So between 18 months and 5 years, you need to get it done. Okay? So now that you've got this date, you got to collect 3,000 clinical supervision hours. 1,500 are direct, meaning face-to-face, you're working with clients, an individual group, some kind of something. I don't know, assessments, whatever. 1,500 hours. Then there's 1,500 indirect. That is like all of your documentation, paperwork. Sometimes that could be like follow-ups and phone calls. That's your CEUs. That's trainings. That's like all that stuff. It's really easy to get the indirect hours, but sometimes it could be hard to get direct hours. I do know if you do the math, if you had a job where you were getting 40 hours a week, you could get it done in 18 months on direct hours. But the reality is it usually takes longer and it's more closer to 20 hours or 30 hours, something like that. Okay? So I'm going to encourage you to, if you are in a position where you can just do this full time, you can bang it out and get it done, try to get as many hours as you can. That'll get you closer to the 18 months. But if you're in a position where you need to work full time because you have a family, you've got this, you got that, this is your second career, whatever, or you just can't afford to just not work for pennies or not at all, be flexible in non-traditional schedules like nights and weekends or part-time something, and just be mindful of what you're doing compared to like what you do every day. So just keep that in mind. My advice. Okay. And so make sure that all of your hours are completed under an approved supervisor. If your supervisor goes slacking in their job duties and keeping their license up, then those hours don't count, and that sucks. So just kind of be mindful of that. Some supervisors are a little bit more tedious than others about how they keep documentation and how things flow. And so when you interview and find your supervisor, just inquire about what that looks like for them. Okay. All right. So now we have completed our 3,000 hours and we are ready to upgrade. This is the next step in the process. And what you're going to do is you're going to submit a supervised experience documentation. It's like an upgrade form. It's just this form that we fill out and we put in like your exact number of hours, and we just kind of put it on this form. And that's what gets submitted up to the portal, right? In the portal again, that gets submitted. If the board says you need to do X, Y, and Z, and sometimes that pays extra fees, sometimes it's other paperwork, sometimes it's take the jurisprudence again, sometimes it's get that self-inquiry again if you needed to, like whatever the board extra stuff, you have to do that too at this point, okay? They want to make sure that when you're coming out the gate, you got everything done, and then you can automatically be on that 2-year cycle. The thing with this piece is that you can submit all your stuff online and whatever you need done. These days, and this is the end of January where I am recording, the turnaround time from going from associate to fully licensed is usually 24, 48 hours. That's kind of where we're sitting right now. That is barring that there's no issues. We don't need to redo anything, or just it's clean. It's a clean upload and everything is good. 24 to 48 hours. That's kind of like where we're at right now. The thing here too is if it goes beyond what is clean and simple, you have to remain under supervision until you get that second date from the board. So remember, the first date was when you can start collecting hours. The second date is the day that you upgraded to fully licensed and you can operate independently on your own, no supervision. So until you get that second date, you have to stay under supervision according to the board. All right. So I wanted to just bring this to you because we get a lot of questions about what does this journey and this process actually looks like. And I want to just remind you, don't overwhelm yourself because you are starting this process or this journey, and what your journey looks like is going to be different for everyone. What you plan, what you want to do may not be exactly how it happens. Like I said, I've had associates finish in just about 18 months, but I've had 1 or 2 that have finished right at the almost 5-year mark. But there's a lot of things that have happened and what made the journey look like whatever it looked like for those people. Okay. So let me just kind of go back over the costs real quick. And so just because sometimes we need to have just a bigger picture of what we're looking at and what to expect. That's the whole point of this episode, is what should I expect? So remember, your official transcripts, most schools are between $10 and $20. I don't know. Your criminal checks, one is $50, one is $13. Your exam is around $275. The jurisprudence is about $39. The actual application is $165. Oh, and what I didn't mention is malpractice insurance. That's usually about $120 for part-time. Malpractice insurance is something that your supervisor should require you, not may, but should require you to have, because it's just like an extra coverage guarding you and your skills and their license, your license. It's just an extra cushion. Not that you may ever need it, but it's just an extra cushion. And that's something you want to put in here as well. And then the last thing I have on my list is monthly supervision fees. Now, I told you, if you are paying for a supervisor in private practice, you're paying for their expertise, their time, and everything that they do for you, however that looks. Some do it bare minimum, some do a whole lot. So the range that I'm finding in the Central Texas area in particular is between $250 and $350. So these are the things that you can think about. Definitely a few $100s coming out the gate, right? But then moving forward, there's going to be that monthly fee. And so keep that in mind on how you move through this process, on what that looks like. Yes, I am currently accepting new associates. And I have things set up where I kind of do more of a flat fee, but I also not just do what the board is requiring us to do as supervisors, but anything that I do for myself, my private practice, or whatever I'm doing somewhere else, my associates tend to have access to all of that as well. So they're getting a whole lot for their flat fee over here. So if you look in the show notes, there's going to be like links. You can click on some of those links, some more pertinent links. In the show notes, they'll be there for you. And if you have any questions, you want to chat with me about supervision or anything of that nature, go to my website, click the link so that you can set up a time to chat. Okay? I hope this was helpful for you, and y'all have a good one. Until next time. Thanks for joining today's rebellion with me. Remember, it's okay to be a hot mess sometimes. It's all part of the journey. Until next time, stay rebellious, stay authentic, and keep embracing the beautiful messiness of life. Don't forget to join the Hot Mess Rebellion community where you can connect with other like-minded souls. And anything mentioned in today's episode will be linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe, you share with a friend, you leave a review, and you keep coming back for more. This podcast was brought to you by Healing Roots Wellness and Botanicals. For more information, please visit healingrootswab.com.